Hey everybody, welcome to the AI Playbook by Lattice Partners. I'm Martin Onkatil. I'm here with Christian Yegnazar. Christian, how's it going?
Fantastic. It is a beautiful day to be back in the podcasting world. I'm excited to be here.
And Colin McDonald is here. Colin, how's it going?
It's going great. It's Monday, my favorite day of the week.
It's a great Monday. It's our first time podcasting in a little while. For those that haven't tuned in before, we're the three co-founders of Lattice Partners. This is the AI Playbook where we talk about AI news, what we're learning in our business, ways you can apply AI to your life and your business as well, and all of that good stuff. Today, we're going to cover a few different topics, some things we've learned, some news, and some advice for you as well. So I think the first place we wanted to start was Colin had a news story he wanted to talk about and share.
Yeah, one of the bigger pieces of news over the last couple days in the AI world is OpenRouter being acquired by Stripe for about $7 billion. So those for those of you that do not know what OpenRouter is it's exactly like it sounds. It essentially routes your code to use different models at any point. So you can use one API key and you're able to access Claude, Gemini, OpenAI, basically any model you want. And so the value there that they have kind of built up is in their ability to intelligently route to different models depending on the task. So if you have something that is very simple, maybe just reading a document and summarizing it, very simple, you're going to want to use like Claude's Haiku model, which is super low intelligence model, but it's also very cheap. And so this open router essentially makes it very easy to do that routing. And now, especially with token costs and compute costs being a huge topic of discussion for a lot of enterprises, something like open router is becoming even more important because you're able to really quickly figure out the best way to optimize your costs. We use OpenRouter internally, actually, a couple different of our apps for things like exactly like I just said, keeping costs low and actually making the models be a little bit faster. So if you start with a cheap model or quicker model that's maybe not as intelligent, it's actually going to give you faster response times. So I think the two parts of this story that are really interesting to me, and maybe we can talk about it a little bit, is one, I think this is just cool. The co-founder of OpenRouter, before he started OpenRouter in 2018, he founded OpenSea, which is the largest NFT marketplace. And he left right at the top. So I think when OpenSea was valued at like $10 billion, he cashed out, left OpenSea, and then started OpenRouter. And now, 3 years later, he's cashing out again for $7 billion by selling OpenRouter to Stripe. So I think that's just like really cool. Shows how a good founder can accomplish a lot. The second part that I'd be curious of your guys' opinions on are why Stripe? Why do we think Stripe decided to purchase OpenRouter? What's the benefit for them?
Yeah, first of all, we got to do whatever he does next. Like whenever he leaves Stripes and starts open, whatever open next thing he starts, I feel like we got to see what that is and follow his footsteps there. But on the Stripe acquisition, I was actually seeing a list of all the companies they had bought. They bought Metronome, I think it was this year, which was a usage based billing startup. For those that don't know, Stripe is like a massive financial payments company. If you're like a software developer and you sell some kind of software, like a monthly subscription, you use Stripe almost always to to do your billing for you. And so there's kind of a shift, I think, in first of all what people sell and how they sell it now with software. It used to be monthly subscriptions, just billed at the beginning of the month based on the number of people that were using the product. And now it's shifted much more to usage based, to credits. Sometimes you're reselling some underlying models, right? And so I still don't quite understand why they bought Open Router. I guess it's probably one of the first times where now Stripe is, I guess, going to be, I guess they're always a middleman, but it feels like they're closer to the actual transaction and the actual thing. Whereas like before, they're really just a payments router. here with OpenRouter, there actually is like a value added in the service, which is like, for example, like the routing, like choosing which model to use intelligently. So it's possible that they're seeing this shift in what it looks like to be a software startup and sell things. And they're saying, well, we want to actually be a part of this, not just, not just be the middleman anymore. We want to be a bit more integrated in like what a startup does. So now instead of using Stripe to manage your payments, you also buy things from Stripe, which expands their relationship with you. I don't know.
Yeah, it's really fascinating, and I think I have a lot of respect for Stripe. Actually, the three of us visited Stripe Press, which is their, I don't know if it still exists actually, but their
It
book,
does. It
they
does.
they publish books and do different things like that. Um, and I know they Stripe has a lot of other value added services. Like I think you can incorporate with Stripe, and they do a lot of other things surrounding your business. And it's one of those players I think in like the AI world that people don't talk about a lot. I think it's so ingrained in like everything that we do, and I just wonder if maybe everyone was kind of sleeping on them a little bit in the agentic world, and now as people start to trust agents to make purchases for them, and it's actually some of the stuff that we're working on in some of our projects internally. I just wonder if they're starting to make moves, like you said, Martin, to do that and potentially even offer different things and expand to be much larger than they actually are. Maybe they're, but maybe at the same time, it's not good for them to move out of just the payment space and own that so clearly. I don't know. It's a very weird world right now with people buying different things, and I even wonder, like, can a startup start now in folk like and be some sort of agentic company or some AI company and actually grow to be its own company, or are they basically just guaranteed to be acquired at some point before they hit like billions of dollars? I don't know. Like, like is everyone just like basically destined to be bought by Stripe, OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, or like any of these guys? Like, can anyone? Does anyone basically have the strength or ability to say no to that? I don't know. I don't know if I would. I'll tell you that.
I think, I mean, Higgsfield is like the first thing that comes to mind. It's just like an agentic tooling company that I think's been around for 2 years, and they're at like, I think they just raised this morning at a $5 billion valuation, and they're just basically model routers. It's also, I think, with the Stripe stuff and OpenRouter, there's a lot of talk lately over the past year that your biggest users are going to be agents in the future. Humans aren't going to be users of your app, so you got to give them ways to pay. And I think Stripe is a natural segue into getting agents to pay very easily. And it feels right, I guess, the more you look at it, that all of these things, model routing and payment routing, is all bundled into one place.
Absolutely. I think it makes sense for Stripe. It makes sense for OpenRouter. They're probably seeing maybe the limits of where they're at now. I think to get from $7 billion valuation to 15 to 30, I think it does get harder, although we're seeing like revenues go like crazy. Anthropic also announced that their revenue run rate ahead of their IPO is 65 billion, I believe, right now, which is insane because in May they were saying 47 billion. So this means they're hoping or anticipating to make 65 billion in the next year. A year ago, they were at about 6 billion, I think, which is just absolutely insane numbers. So I think that's what you're seeing from all these companies too, is just an explosion in usage. So these seed rounds or these fundraising rounds, excuse me, are make sense, but at the same time, you've got to be asking yourself, especially if you're Alex from OpenRouter, you've seen the NFT bubble happen. You've got to wonder, like, maybe the music stops at some point and those 10x's aren't happening anymore, and you want to sell. The other thing we want to talk about is actually something I noticed in the last few weeks. So as part of our services at Lattice, we interview a lot of people at different companies to understand how they're using AI, what's working well for them, what's not working for them, what are they hoping to get out of it. And one thing that's really becoming clearer to me over the last month is how many people are vibe coding their own software at work. And this is like people who are not technical. Consistently, it's people who have never written code until a few months ago, who are now building things that are not just like a little side tool, not like a little dashboard or something like that, but like something that actually is a real critical, really critical to their workflows. And so one example of this is at a financial firm that we talked to. We went and talked to several of their analysts who were the biggest users. One thing is the biggest users of Claude also very often at a company are the youngest people. Not too surprisingly, they also are very often the top users are the people that are coding. And very often they're coding something that they actually need, right? They might not be the most efficient users of Claude Code. They're probably wasting a good amount of tokens. They're learning as they go, but you get these really interesting kind of like emergent use cases. And one thing that really struck me at one of these companies we went to, they have, maybe 200 people. And I found 5 different analysts had essentially built themselves the same tool in Claude Code. And so they're each spending like, let's say $1,000 a month building and maintaining this tool. So you're basically spending $5,000 a month just to do this. And you kind of have like a essentially inexperienced developer. And on one hand, that's kind of a bummer because it feels like, well, maybe the company could structure it differently and, not spend $5,000 on Claude for like people to be vibe coding their own tools. On the other hand, it's amazing because very quickly you understand this is what people actually need, right? Instead of them having to communicate to somebody else, well, here's my workflows, here's what I need it to connect to this, I need to be able to translate it into that, I need to export it to this. They just talk to Claude, they get it done that way, and very quickly you can understand kind of what's actually important to their job, and then someone else can come in and aggregate that all into one. This is what we do at Lattice, build a very good tool that then everybody can actually really rely on instead of it being these like 5 different tools for 5 different people. So I found this pretty interesting. I don't know if you guys have seen other use cases of people building their own tools, but that's been really crazy to me recently. I've seen so much of it.
Yeah, I think at a few of the other places that we've done interviews, seen very similar kind of use cases. And actually, I think it's like lean to say that this is a fantastic thing. I think people are thinking very critically about their work and ways they can save time and do a better job. What's really interesting, and I don't know if Martin, you agree with this, or Colin, you agree with this, what I've found is that these people, because they're so ingrained in their workflows, will often take some sort of workflow that is like broken, and then we'll try and kind of build a tool to fix that rather than fixing the actual workflow itself. So for an example is if I have to make a very complicated Excel quarterly report to show, financial performance over the last quarter, and it requires all sorts of different reports and different things in Excel. What they'll do is, or what I've seen is, people will build some sort of tool like that actually does all this transformation and then outputs it into an Excel. And like maybe they have like a dashboard for them to see themselves, but they're missing like almost the greatest unlock. And I think this also comes at like, does your organization actually encourage the use of AI and building? And it's a very cultural thing. But instead of using the Excel as an output, why don't you just have your dashboard as an output and share that out with your clients or your customers? Like breaking the current process and using your vibe coded tool as like a key part of the work that you do, I don't think is there yet. And I don't know if CEOs or managers know necessarily what to do with that, or like what is the right approach. Do we change our whole process because some intern just created this dashboard that looks great, but like, is this really what we want to do? I don't know. I'm seeing that a lot. And I think leaning into that and like thinking through like how can we change the way that we work for the better is I think the way to go. Colin, if you have any other differing thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I 100% agree with both of the points you guys are making. The most fascinating part to me is that with the increase, or I guess the ease of use of coding tools and just how easily anybody can make an app, you would think that the demand for software engineers or for people that can code would go down, because now it's, I can make an app on Lovable. Anyone can make an app on Lovable and publish it, post it super quickly. Why do I need an engineer? You'd think the demand would go down because of that. But in actuality, I feel like we're seeing a huge increase in people needing engineers or developers, designers, people that can really like kind of own and create an app end to end that works super well, because now everyone feels like they're able to do it. And so they get 50% of the way there and then they're like, oh, wow, I want to keep going, but I don't know how to get a database set up, or I don't know how to get this live on whatever it might be. And so we're actually seeing a huge increase in the need for software engineers. There was a period where the amount of engineers that were getting hired was going way down, and then now it's kind of gone way back up again because people realize they need someone that can round out a product. So that's been like the most interesting emergent thing from all of this that I really did not expect.
What do you think is needed? Like, if you are CEO of a 50% company, you've got some interns vibe coding some tools. How do you know if it's something that you need to an engineer to come in and like fix it up, or can the intern just keep scaling it, just managing it? Like, how should someone think about that?
Yeah, it's funny. I actually think it's a lot less and less of an engineering problem and more of a resourcing problem, or permissioning problem, where it's very easy to make an app, but to make sure the permissions are correct, someone's not going to delete everything that you have in real data. It's secure. It's not going to break when you get more than two people using it. Those are sort of the things that I think are emerging as like now the biggest need is just people to kind of be able to own the product and make sure it's fully working, and then also figuring out like what to build next. It's, to me, it really seems like the PM engineer type is in the highest demand right now. People that can think about the product, make sure everything is tidy with it, and then also what do we actually build, because it's so easy to build new things now that you need someone to be able to critically think about what to build and then how to build it. So it's funny. It's actually like feels like it's becoming less and less of a pure engineering thing to more of PM/engineer. I don't know if you agree or disagree on that.
I completely agree, and it actually reminds me of a story that I'll connect back to this because I think it raises the question of like, what do you do with these people? Like, what is their role? What should their role be? So I know somebody that was interning at a large company that has no engineering team. It's like a rotational internship program, and they basically built an AI tool, so something similar to what Martin explained. And they basically, the company was like, to the intern, you can't end your internship, because when your internship ends, there will be no one to maintain this tool that you built that we now need, and we don't have we don't have anyone that knows how to do this. And so that this person has like now been offered to basically continue their internship throughout the school year. Um, and it just makes me wonder, right? And to your point, Colin, now let's say this person gets a full-time offer and they're like in the sales department, but they've been building this tool. Like, what is, and the value of this individual is that they've built this tool and they can do these sort of things, but they're being hired for other job function. Like, what should these people be doing? Should this live? I guess it's like almost like, is this a grassroots? Should it be grassroots, or should it kind of be consolidated into like ultimately what I think the old world solution is, an IT department, right? That manages all these tools and does all these things. But I mean, having seen that, oftentimes that's a blocker to progress, innovation, and growth. So I just wonder, is it like, are there the cost of like having multiple of the same tools or all these other things? Is it worth it because you actually innovate faster than having a centralized place that kind of stops, starts, and kind of gates the process? But I almost wonder if it's like we're going to see like a rethinking of like what does technology look like at non-technology companies.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because it makes you wonder what the role of any individual knowledge worker is now that vibe coding exists. Maybe it's, I don't know if a good comparison is like Excel macros or something. Like if you're an analyst, you probably like do a lot of like kind of coding type stuff in Excel. Like you do some pretty complicated workflows, And so it's possible that everyone does it a little bit now. Like that just becomes like everyone does it as like 10% of their job is they build their own tools. At the same time, building your own tools is hard, and I think at some point it is useful to have a product manager type to help like aggregate, okay, here's what everybody wants, and like I'll put it all together into one neat tool that we can use. And I think it also is kind of like an inevitable law of software and engineering that as things grow and scale and are more important and useful, like it just takes they move slower. It takes more time to maintain it. You can't just like have anybody changing the code that everybody is using. And so maybe it's, I think the right middle ground to me is vibe coders or people who care a lot about the tool being very heavily involved in the development process, but that not being the person who's doing the coding is not some faraway dev shop. It's someone that you're meeting with every week who like understands your work and can very easily like translate what you're looking for back into code. Kind of a good example is we have an internal kind of sales enablement ERP type platform that I've been building, and Niall on our team will basically like send me requests that I mostly just kind of relay into Cursor, but I can basically act as an intermediary between like all the technical things that I know and like not what Niall needs. And I can move fast enough that that's okay. But there's definitely a world where maybe Niall just puts stuff in Cursor and we have Cursor be good enough to know how to not break things. But I think that having that middle ground is helpful. So I think that that's kind of how I see it in the future is like people will be very involved in the tools that they use, but I don't think it makes sense for everyone to be taking time away from their core responsibilities to actually spend a bunch of time vibe coding. Because also there is value in like knowing a little bit of the engineering behind the scenes. And I think most people who are vibe coding, if you talk to them about like how they've built it or like what's happening behind the scenes, there's close to zero understanding, which is totally fine if it works, but also that's where things can go wrong sometimes. That was a short AI playbook. We're coming up on time. We got some meetings we got to get to, but it was good to chat, and we'll have a lot more of these soon.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
See you guys.